I've printed a copy of our design onto watercolor paper to show you how to shade each of the patterns, and I'm diluting the paint and now shading Knightsbridge with a nice shade right up underneath each of the grid lines. The next pattern I'm shading is Chillon, and the shadow goes right along the basic grid of this pattern, and it's just a very fine shadow right along that line. The next pattern shading is on Flukes, and again the shadow goes right along the grid line, but notice that it goes through that upright cross that you started with, and that will make it look like each one of the squares are a tile that overlaps the one below it. Next is Cadent, and again the shadow goes right along one edge of the line or the grid in both directions. Onabata is next, and again try to make a C shaped about 3/4 of the way around, and then lighten it as it gets towards the center of each circle. I'm adding a shadow on the outside of the row of circles to make it look like they're sitting on top of the paper, and that they're casting a shadow onto the paper. Next is stripes, again going around your grid line that you drew, just a soft shadow, and then around the outside again making it look like stripes is sitting on top of the canvas. I'm adding some very tiny shadows right under the little festoons, and that makes them look like they are casting a shadow onto the canvas too. I'm adding a little bit of water around the outside of these shadows because the line's a little bit sharp, and I was trying to lighten it just a little bit. And you can add a little bit of water, and then you can take a paper towel and blot it a little bit if you feel like it's just a little bit too dark, is what I'm going to do, and that will pull off some of the dark paint and soften that line. I'm adding a small shadow up under Xander, which stands up above all the other patterns, and adding this extra shadow all along the length makes it look like it's taller and it's casting a shadow on the patterns below it. Next, I'm adding a tiny shadow under each one of the little fescue flowers, and that just will accentuate making them look taller. The shadows are all in at this point, and now I'm going to take the white paint and add some what we call sparkle or highlights to some of the patterns, and this just makes it look like they're much closer to us and the light is reflecting off that top ridge on stripes. So use your white paint. It doesn't need to be diluted with water. In fact, it'll work better if it's a little bit thick. Now I'm adding a tiny highlight to each one of the little eggs or circles of Onomata, so we have a good contrast between the shadows and the highlights. Take a look at the before and after with the highlights and shadows, and you can see what the difference is in just a little bit of shading.